Welcome to another episode of Disability and Assistive Technology Today. Join Jeremy Murray and I while we discuss disability, technology, adaptation news, and reviews. Welcome to our seventh, yes, I said it, seventh edition of DATT Show. This week, joining me is Jeremy Murray and Christy Edwards, as usual. We're going to talk about the top 5 posts on the DATT community on Google+, and feel free to participate through our IRC chat. If you go to datt.tv, there's a link there for the IRC chat, and you can join us there. Or if you're on an IRC client, it's escaped me at the moment, but we'll post that. Ah, yes, there you go. Well, if you know what it is, Jeremy, you step right in.
Yeah, it's Swift Chat. And the class, the chat room is
Swift IRC.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, qwebric.swiftirc.net, and the channel is #DATT. So, without further ado, let's kick off with the first story. I guess this one's mine, and it actually was posted by me on the site through. Actually, no, it came through our good friend Graham Clements, and it's called "Breaking Down the Barriers." And this is something that's pretty close to me because it really exemplifies what I'm doing here at the university and what many others are doing around the world to accommodate folks who have a disability. And that's by providing technology and training and learning strategies to supplement the technology. So this article I found really, really interesting because it hits home with a lot of what we're doing here, and in particular with the iPad and how the iPad has become sort of an essential tool for students with disabilities for a couple of reasons. Because the software that accommodates students on the whole is fairly cheap. There are some expensive pieces of software out there that can be in the hundreds of dollars, but of course, even paying hundreds of dollars for an app on the iPhone or the iPad is way cheaper than having to buy a laptop, for instance, and then buy the accommodating software like Kurzweil, for instance, which by itself is about $1,500. And there's several alternatives that we can talk about maybe in an app review to Kurzweil for the iPad. Or even text help, or whatever it is that you're using for text-to-speech. So this particular story really sets about talking how funding goes in their home region, and what they did with some of the funding. And they've got iPads, which is similar to what I'm doing here at the University of New Brunswick. I'm loaning iPads to students, and which allows them to read their class notes and textbooks without having to worry about carrying around a laptop or the actual textbooks themselves. So, if you're interested in reading about where these guys are going with this project and how they acquired their funding, I'd encourage you to check the link out, which of course will be in the show notes when Jeremy edits this video and puts it online. If you'd like to follow up with that on your own, and I guess that's really it on that story. Jeremy, you got anything to say about that?
No, I guess I really don't have experience when it comes to funding, simply because I'm not in that aspect of the area. Just to say, I do appreciate programs that offer, like we do here at UMB, the loaning of the equipment for people who need the assistive technology. And I hope more places kind of pick up on the idea, and it continues to be. Play with your hair, Andrew.
Can't help it. Nobody's looking at me. They're looking at you. You're listening.
Yes, they are. Anyway, I appreciate programs like this, and I hope more people pick up on it, and I just think it's a great initiative.
You think you can edit that out, or?
No.
Oh.
Because It's just funny. I don't want to edit it out.
See, because the camera's backwards, you get your hair all messed up, and you can't. Which hand am I carrying here? Wait a minute. No. Oh, there we go. There we go.
This is why I don't have hair. See?
Yeah. Well, I have to go to a barber. You don't.
It should be Christy that's fixing her hair. She's the. I shouldn't have said that.
No, no, you shouldn't. All
All
right,
right.
next, speaking of Christy, Christy, do you have anything to add to this? I mean, you use an iPad as a student with a disability, so I mean, what up?
I do use an iPad, and I do find that it's very helpful to have stuff like this too, so you don't have to pay so much money on other alternatives. And for me personally, I use the subtitle app on the iPad, which is great because it's portable and it's right in front of you. And I understand other people do not like having words on screen. So when you're in classroom with 3,300 students and with words on the screen, and it can be distracting for other students, and it just makes me feel better that knowing that everybody's comfortable watching this movie and or film or whatever, and having just an iPad in front of me, I'm the only one using it or reading the words. So I agree with Jeremy that I also appreciate people putting effort into making this happen.
The software that you're using in particular is a great piece of software. It should be mentioned that you and Jeremy both are in a film production program. So you guys, through the nature of your program, have a tendency to watch films and TV shows and commercials.
Yeah.
So having an app like the Subtitles app, which we'll add in the notes as a download if you like from the iTunes store. It allows you to download subtitles from the Open Subtitle Network. So there's every movie and most, you'd be surprised, there's a lot of TV on there that you can download. I downloaded a few subtitle SRT files for The Big Bang Theory, and they work great. Many languages too, not just English, but French, Portuguese, Spanish, German, Dutch, they're all there.
Yep.
I personally have never heard of this app, so it's kind of great for me to hear about it.
Well,
Given that I'm in a film production,
you're able to listen right along though, so I mean it's not something that you would have come along
That's
with,
true, but I'm very interested in assistive technology, so the more I know, the more I can help somebody else in the future.
Yeah, and having subtitles doesn't just help those who are hard of hearing or deaf. It also can help people who have dyslexia or attention deficit disorder to sort of keep up with what's going on in whatever it is that they're watching. So we'll be sure to add a link to that. It's free. It's and it's an iOS app. I'm not sure if there's an alternative on the Android marketplace. So maybe if there's somebody here, maybe you can make a recommendation if you catch this. And hopefully it's free. I know that there's varying, price structures on Android where some apps on iOS are free that charge on Android and vice versa. There's apps that are free on Android and they charge on iOS. So who can figure that out?
Yeah, and it should be mentioned that I don't know if we mentioned it before, but the story was originally shared to the community by Jeff Kang.
Yeah. Great.
And now for a segue to the third story. The third story that was picked for this week's episode is about robotics caring for elderly people. Now, the title of this story is a little misleading because it's not an actual robot. What it is a presence, like a video presence of another human being. So, one person in another area would have like a video feed coming from this machine, so that if an elderly person said that they needed help, like if it was an emergency, they could have a presence of a person in the room with them to kind of keep them calm, and also to notify the authorities if it was something that needed to be notified. Of course, this also has other purposes, like if you're going to a conference but the place isn't accessible, they could use something like this to kind of pipe the conference through, I guess.
It's called a telepresence.
That's it, telepresence.
Video telepresence.
Yeah. And so it's great for companionship, great for in case of notifying authorities in case of emergency. It's got many different uses. I just thought that it was kind of unique that they would use something like this as sort of a presence, not a physical presence, but a presence in a room for an elderly person who may not have that communication. It just seemed like a great idea and a fairly easy one to do.
It's not. It should be mentioned that the hardware isn't just for people who are elderly, but it's also for those who have disabilities, or even if you're a company that's spread across a country, and you want to be able to have a presence in your offices in different locations, maybe thousands of kilometers away. You could actually use the telepresence, the video presence, to participate in meetings, to view new, maybe you've got a R&D portion of your business located in a different place where the manufacturing is occurring, which is often the case, and the engineers want to see how things are going, or vice versa. This kind of a telepresence can help to do that, but more importantly, for our purposes, I think that when it comes to people with disabilities, students in particular, there's lots of times when a student wants to participate in a lab for a science program, and it's maybe on the third floor of a building that's not accessible. Then the video presence, which stands at the same height as an average person, 5.5 to 6 feet tall, and it has the display on it, which you'll be able to see on the link that we'll provide in the show notes. It basically frames the face of the person who's on one end, so that that person on the receiving end can see the person that's participating and speaking, much like we're doing here on this hangout. So it's not just for the elderly. It can be used in many areas.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really make that clear. But what are your thoughts on something like this, Christy?
When I first read the title, it was very misleading because I thought it was going to be an actual robot, but or a cyborg or some sort. And then I opened up the article, and no, it's totally different than what I thought it was going to be. It's basically it's like a tripod with an iPad on top, basically.
With wheels.
With wheels that can be moved around, yeah.
The person that's actually making that's actually doing the teleconference, that's sending the images of themselves to the robot.
Right.
It actually can control with a remote, usually on an iOS device or an Android device, can actually control the robot around the room. So, for instance, in the case with the elderly people, if a person falls, they have a little button, on their chest and around on a lanyard. They push a button, it makes a call to an emergency service like this company. And usually, like Jeremy and I were talking earlier, most elderly folks live on one floor, so they fall in the kitchen, and the telepresence happens to be in the living room. When they push the button, the robot comes to life with the person's face framed on the screen. They can then maneuver the robot so that they can go to where that person is and tilt the screen down so that they can have a two-way conversation face-to-face with the person who's made the emergency call. So that's...
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The way you just explained that just a second ago reminds me of a video lifeline. For those of you who don't know what lifeline is, it's a service that you push a button and then it calls the authorities.
Yeah, a very elaborate one, but same, yes.
Yeah.
Very cool.
For sure.
Excuse me, I forgot to mention who originally shared this, and I'm probably gonna butcher it.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah.
Alzheimer's Association, Western and Central Washington State Chapter.
Yes, that's right.
Again, they'll be in the show notes if you want to follow them.
Yes. Okay, so I guess we're on to story number 4, and this is the story that I would kind of consider the main story of the show. That's why we've named the show 3D Printing for the Win. The story is about 3D printing and making life easier for those who have disabilities. This story was mainly about 3D printing ramps to be able to get over curb cuts that do not have, or over curbs that do not have curb cuts. Sorry for my poor English there. So basically what this individual did is they 3D printed a set of ramps out of plastic material, so the exact height of curb cuts, or an average curb cut, so that the individual who was in a wheelchair could then get into their apartment or any building that had these curb cuts, or lack of curb cut. And they also pretty smartly painted them yellow so that if they were permanently fixed there, cars or whoever could see them so they wouldn't trip over them or run them over or whatever. So it's a way to make a building that's not wheelchair accessible.
I suppose you could anchor those just especially if you're pounding them into asphalt with like a 10-inch, one of those 10-inch 10-inch spikes. You know what I'm talking about? Right through the short end of the wedge, right into the asphalt, and then they would be there permanently.
And I don't know, maybe I misread it, but I thought that that's what the individual had done, is anchored them. That's why he painted them yellow.
Well, that's that in this case. But if you were going to drag them around with you, for instance, like say you had you printed them and then threw them in a bag, and if you had an attendant with you or a friend with you, they could throw them down for you. Say if you went to the mall or some other
place that's not wheelchair accessible.
Right.
Which in this city, there's quite a few places.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed in previous episodes, 3D printing is a great way to get around some of these issues, and this is just a perfect story and a perfect way of doing it.
Well, we talk about 3D printing quite a bit on the community, and I've said right from the beginning that it's the wave of the future, and it's certainly going to change how people with disabilities do things, because as you can attest, Jeremy, anytime you want something done with your chair to accommodate things like shooting video or what have you, you can't just go to the rehabilitation center and say, in any reasonable amount of time,
yeah,
I need this built. They can probably do it for you, but it's going to take a long time. It's not going to be a priority because it's not medically necessary.
Time and a lot of money.
And it's going to cost some money. So being able to print things like 3D clamps and or not 3D, sorry, 3D print clamps that are custom, so that if we have a specific spot on your chair we want to affix something, we can actually engineer and print something for ourselves that would mount to that specific place rather than something generic.
Exactly, and 3D printing is not just for those with disabilities, but I can see.
She's a game changer, though.
Oh, definitely a game changer, and I can't wait till it gets to the point where it's so commercially available that we have desktop 3D printers.
I remember.
We'll be there.
I remember when these things the desktop 3D printing craze really started back a while ago through Maker, through a guy named Bree Pettis, who's also on the Google communities, BRE, and his last name is Pettis, Pettis, and he is the founder and creator of something called MakerBot, and it was one of the first commercially available or retail available desktop 3D printers, and I think they were $2,000 or $3,000 at the time, and they came in pieces. You had to put them together, but that was the Maker ethos, and still is today. And now you can buy a 3D printer from a number of different companies for much less, especially if you're willing to shop in places like China. You can get these pretty cheaply.
Yeah, I've got no problem with that as long as I can do what I want to do with it.
Yeah, and I think that the big issue is getting the materials to print with. And if you buy from a place where you're having to have them shipped overseas, you may not always be able to get the material. And the reason why I say that is because some 3D printers print with a reservoir at the top that stuff melts into. There's other ones that print from a spool of plastic. The method of printing is the same for every printer, or just about for every printer, especially the plastic ones. But it's the delivery of the printable material that changes. So anyway, it's just something to be aware of.
Which would mean that some materials just wouldn't quite work with certain printers.
Just because of the way they're done. Like one on the spool, some of them are on spools, and the different widths of the material depending on what manufacturer you buy for the front, what's around the spool may not
Yeah.
fit in one printer, but it'll fit in another. So, and I'm sure they probably do that for, just like printer companies do with their ink cartridges. They're very specific. You can't go out and put an HP printer cartridge in an Epson printer. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. What would you say? Moving to story number 5, Andrew? Or do you have any opinions on this, Christy, I should say?
Oh, you guys pretty much covered it all. I was gonna say something, but you guys covered it.
All right.
Well, go
Yeah.
for it. Jeremy can edit us out and put you in.
Yeah, well, I can do something there for sure. So if you have anything you want to say, you
No,
feel
no.
free.
You're good. All right,
good.
so let's move on to the last story of the day, and it's brought to you by, me, plus Andrew Daly. And
Nothing like an ego boost.
yeah. So the story is called "Mind-Controlled Prosthetic Arm Receives FDA Approval." Now, we're here in Canada, so we're not governed by the FDA, but we're often here 5 to 10 years. 5 years behind the United States when it comes to these types of things. So hopefully federal approval in the United States will lend to federal approval here in Canada and around the world. But basically what happens is there's a video on the link, which of course will be in the show notes as usual, bringing you to a video of a gentleman using this prosthetic arm, and it cost a lot of money to develop and a lot of time. And it's different from a regular prosthetic arm in that it has controls in it, much like the Mayo and the Ring that we've talked about in the past on the community, that gives you the ability to communicate with the device through a secondary measure. In this case, it's nerve endings located on the end of your your arm, and then the electrodes connect to the nerve endings, and when you think about moving your hand or moving your arm, it will automatically do that for you. So it's pretty cool. Technology is coming a long way, especially in the area of prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad to see improvements with such things as prosthetics, because that is an issue that many people face. Not me specifically, but I've gotten to meet a number of people who have had amputations or have been born without limbs. So seeing advancements in such things as prosthetics is it's quite the thing, and it's a growing field. Even here at UMB, we've got some pretty interesting research into prosthetic limbs.
Yeah, our kinesiology department is quite a way ahead. Our biomechanics faculty is constantly in the news with respect to these types of things. That story you're talking about, Jeremy, was just recent, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it's very good. I'm
I
glad
think
to see that.
It was a couple years, I guess, but it was like 2011. But it was quite the big advancement.
Yeah.
And the research originally came from here. I believe we've talked about it on the show in previous installments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. So, is there any last words, Christy?
Prosthetics limbs are awesome. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
It came a long way, that's for sure.
Yeah, prosthetic limbs and 3D printing for the win. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Christy, there's one little side note I'd like to mention. You put up a video regarding a new alarm device for your mobile phone. Can you tell us a little bit about that? We'll post some of the information on it in the show notes as well if anybody wants to follow up.
Yeah, for sure. I have an alarm system that only does the fire alarm, which is great. But I also had a problem. I text frequently, and often I don't hear the phone when it rings or when it vibrates when I'm in bed. And there's nothing that can hook up to the phone from the system I currently have. So I found something online and ordered it. It's basically like a box that has LED light around it, and you can hook it up. It has a sensor in it as well that can pick up the vibrations, but it can also hook up directly to the phone as well if you want. And whenever the phone vibrates or rings, it sets off this box that has light, and it flashes blue light. And you can hook up a bed shaker to it, and any generic bed shaker, doesn't have to be a specific one.
Cool.
And slip that under the pillow and wakes you right up whenever you get a text.
Yeah, and it should be said too, like I think you did say it's not just for a specific type of phone. I mean, you use an
No.
Android phone, so
It can be any kind of phone, because it's not a dock for a specific phone. It's a dock for any kind of phone, because the ledge where it sits on is very wide, and where you can plug your phone into to charge it, it's very open. Like it's very universal.
And it plugs in via like a headphone jack, doesn't it?
Yeah, it plugs in right in the
shaker
headphones
does.
jack.
The shaker does.
No, there's another wire that hooks up from the dock to the phone.
The shaker plugs into the dock, and then the dock plugs into the phone.
I gotcha. And it also senses vibration and listens for ringing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So if you want to follow up on that story and check out what Christy did with that and get a little demo on how it works, check out. I think that there was a link in in the community for that with the video, and we'll also put a link in the show notes so that you can go directly to it if you like.
Yep.
So.
And just some final notes for the ending of the show. As always, if you guys would like a story talked about in the show, you can post it to the community. And mention that you think it's something that would be worth talking about in the show, and we will do our best to put it in there. You can also email us at dattshow@gmail.com. That's DATT show@gmail.com. You can also get a hold of us via the IRC chat on the website. Me and Andrew are usually on there quite a bit. And it's open all the time if you guys just want to go in there and chat with each other. I'm really trying to push that because I feel like it's something to help grow the community.
Well, it's accessible. That's why we like IRC, because most, especially for those who are visually impaired or have some sort of a reading disability, it's accessible to software like JAWS, for instance, or Text Help, which reads text aloud.
Yeah. Also,
even on the web.
Yeah, exactly. Also, if if you have any questions for any of us, we're very open. You can message us on Google Plus. Our username things are in our lower thirds. You can also just post a message on the community, and we'll find it and respond to you as soon as possible. Yeah, I just hope you guys enjoy this episode, and see you next time we do it, which we have to plan.
We'll do our best to keep a regular schedule. It's going to be easier over the summer, so
we're looking at every 2 weeks, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. So thanks for watching. Peace out.
See you next time, guys.